I am not religious, I am not Catholic, but even I felt the earth shake last week when rumours raced out of the Vatican that the Pope is planning to ban traditional Latin Mass from almost every church in the world. To discuss this cataclysmic religious divide is author, legal academic, Spectator contributor and translator Rocco Loiacono. Rocco, welcome to the show.
Sandra?
Look, I know you want to race off into a huge rant, but can we just break it down for a second? Most people have heard of traditional Latin Mass. It's one of those rich cultural activities that the Church engages in. Rocco, has Latin Mass fallen out of favour? I mean, you might understand the Church is choosing to drop it if there was a problem with attendance, but banning Latin Mass across the world seems to be an extraordinary thing to do.
It completely it goes against the grain. Since the Latin Mass was liberalised, shall we say, or wider permission was granted by Pope John Paul II and then Benedict XVI, who made it completely liberalised it. The interest and the attendance at the Latin Mass has grown exponentially. It's turbocharged an otherwise moribund church. And this is not because of nostalgia by older people who were born when the Latin Mass was still the main Mass of the church prior to 1969. The average age of people who attend the Latin Mass is under the age of 30. So it is the only area of growth in the church. Most parishes where the Latin Mass is offered, you will get anywhere between 700 and 1,000 people. Most parishes would kill for those kind of numbers. Most churches these days, when you go to a Mass, one of these new Masses in the vernacular, you'd be lucky to find 60 or 70 people, and the age of those people is 60 and 70. So this idea that there's nostalgia and it's about looking backward rather than forward it's completely the opposite of what is actually happening. And people are attracted to the traditional Mass because it offers a sense of the sacred, a sense of the transcendent, whereas the new Mass these days, because of the way it's celebrated, there's a lot of folk singing and guitar strumming, and it's all about trying to be hip, and it's centered on the person. Whereas the Latin Mass, because of the chant and the Latin and the way that the priest faces, he faces away from the people rather than facing the people. People get the sense that this is something otherworldly. It's centered on God rather than on them. And in today's day and age, people definitely are looking for something, and the Latin Mass provides that inspiration and that God-centeredness that they don't seem to find anywhere else.
Well, that actually sounds a little bit hippie, this new Latin Mass that's going on. But you did write in your article in The Spectator that the traditional Latin Mass is growing amongst Gen Z, almost as if their culture is devoid of meaning in the modern world and they are seeking out the more mystical and elaborate side of religion. And you said, and I'm going to quote you here from your article, 18,000 young people walked on a pilgrimage from Paris to Chartres Cathedral in order to demonstrate their love of the traditional Latin Mass. Now, what I'm confused about here is, if it's popular among the young and the church has a problem trying to convert young people and to keep young people in the pews, where is this push to get rid of Latin Mass, traditional Latin Mass, coming from? It seems to be the most bizarre thing to go and do for the church.
Absolutely, Alexandra, and that's the $64 million question. Look, basically, this is a push by clergy and the Pope who hate the Latin Mass because they think it's backward, and they think people are in it want to be schismatic and don't want to obey what the church is telling you. Well, nothing can be further from the truth. I mean, people who go to Latin Mass are faithful Catholics and are probably more loyal to the doctrine of the church, indeed more loyal to the Pope than anyone. So this is the bizarre thing. This particular Pope, he's not necessarily very intellectual. In fact, he's described by most people who know him as a schemer and only interested in power. And the advisors that he surrounds himself with are very similar. They seem to want to troll traditional Catholics while at the same time saying, "Oh, the church is open to everyone." I mean, the Pope himself said at this synod last year, "Tutti, tutti, tutti, everyone, everyone, everyone." But unfortunately, a lot of people feel excluded rather than included in Francis' church. And this is the sad thing about this, that he is actually trying to exclude and trying to shove away the very people that you want to encourage to be in the church. Young, faithful, these are the future of the church, but he's trying to shut them out because he thinks they're backward nutters. The nutter, I'm afraid, is in the Vatican.
Well, I went looking for some reasons as to why this would all be happening, and one Catholic publication pointed out a common problem, not only with the Catholic faith, but with Western institutions in general. The young priests did not know Latin, had not been taught the rubrics, and could not perform complex ceremonies. They said that this lack of ability was causing division, and others say that the politically conservative within the Catholic movement were using traditional Latin Mass as a way to fight the Pope on other issues of the Church, including climate change, mass migration, and social justice. What are your thoughts about that?
Look, the first part, yeah. Look, there might be some priests out there who it would be like me trying to say the Mass in Vietnamese. They speak in terrible pig Latin, and look. It reminded of something my parents, I think, said, that when they came to Australia from Italy, there were these Irish priests who were saying Latin, and their Latin was terrible. But look, that is a very minor aspect of this problem. I mean, it's not even a problem. I mean, it's almost like a straw man argument. It doesn't really exist. Well, yeah, it might be one or two, but at the end of the day, you go to a Latin Mass and it's performed beautifully, and it's spiritually uplifting. Ask anyone who goes to the Mass at Aloysius in Melbourne, or to the Mass at Lewisham, or to the Oratory up in Brisbane. Ask anyone who goes there and see if their standard of liturgy is poor because of a priest who can't speak Latin. That's just nonsense. The second one is even more silly, using it as a Trojan horse to attack the Pope. Well, look, as I said, these people, look, they probably differ from the Pope on some of these issues, such as same-sex blessings and the like, but they're not using the Mass to attack the Pope for that. They're using the Mass because they want to go every Sunday to something that's spiritually uplifting for their own personal relationship with God, and not as some, as I say, political Trojan horse to attack the Pope. These are just excuses put up by people to crack down, and as I say, they're nonsense.
Well, if you don't like how someone speaks Latin, we've got this bizarre institution called education where you can pay or encourage people to go and learn things. I mean, it's a crazy approach, but they could try that. But Rocco, modernity is definitely a part of this conversation. Traditional Catholic worshippers see trans flags draped over their altars. There are smoking ceremonies going on the stage. There are drag queens addressing the congregation. There are installations being placed in churches, particularly in Europe, to highlight climate change instead of the glory of God. We've got these churches being abandoned. Some are being burned to the ground or misused as political tools in the culture war. Now, you wrote that some feel there is a sense of a scandal-ridden Pope losing confidence in his bishops, and we've got this insidious political movement also edging in here. How much is this a political argument going on between the Pope and his people, and also the wider conversation of our culture wars?
Look, this is exactly the culture wars have now come into the Catholic Church, and the Church, like every other Western institution, there are people inside it who are trying to destroy it from within. And unfortunately, these are a lot of the leaders, and fish rots from the head. So the Pope is probably the worst offender. Look, the whole point of Christianity, of the Catholic Church, is that it is countercultural. It is meant to stand against the pagan society and the wider world, and provide a beacon of hope for those who are looking for a pathway to God. If you adopt everything that modernity is encouraging, well, then you lose that sense of counterculture. It's the same. You can make the same analogy for the Liberal Party. or for conservative parties, right? Why are people abandoning conservative parties? Because they're Labor light, because they're trying to out-green the Greens, because they're trying to out-left the left. They're trying to ape what the left is doing. Some people say, right, well, they don't reflect our beliefs, so we'll go somewhere else. We're not going to vote for them. It's the same with the Catholic Church. Since the 1960s, when the Catholic Church has tried this updating experiment, known in Italian as aggiornamento, what have we seen? Empty churches, divorces up, birth rates down. People, my year group, I left school in 1993. My year group, I reckon around 10%. Would have attended Mass on a regular basis. It's probably even lower now, unless they're attending a Latin Mass. So this is the problem. People have seen the church go modern. They don't like what they see. They're saying that, well, look, this is not presenting a challenge to the modern world. This is joining the modern world. Well, we want something else. We want something different. So is it any wonder that people now look to other religions? I'll never forget when I left school, the headmaster said, "Boys, the world is becoming pagan. People are going to worship the gods of money, the gods of sex, the gods of cars, you name it." And that's what people are doing. They're worshipping the god of climate change or something else, because Christianity, and in that the Catholic Church, is not offering that sense of otherworldliness, that pathway to God, that special relationship with God that it once used to. And that is another reason why people, when they see something like Latin Mass, they're drawn to it, and they say, well, look, once we see this, we're hooked. We'll never want to go back, because we see in this a deeper, more meaningful and more spiritual relationship with God. And it's countercultural. It's not what the world is offering. It's a complete contrast to modernity. Why the church wants to abandon it, it's beyond me, and it's as I say, a source of great, not only perplexity, but of course a source of great sadness to so many people.
Well, modernity is not exactly the Renaissance of our time. It's not as if we're producing these extraordinary leaps of beauty and culture that we once were. I mean, our architecture is being stripped down from sandstone creations to these horrible glass and steel monstrosities. Our artwork is not even fit to be hung in galleries. It's getting mistaken for literal trash. Our language and our novels and our books are nothing but propaganda that you wouldn't even pick up if it was free. And our religion, in a way, is also being stripped down, where we're taking everything that was beautiful and mystical about it and trying to strip it down. You can see it in the monarchy. They're trying to strip the monarchy down. Big mistake. They shouldn't be doing that. They're taking away pieces of our culture. We've only got about a minute here, Rocco, but if the church modernizes and makes itself look like a communist regime rather than a religion, is that the end for the Catholic faith? Do you think it's in its decline if it does this?
Catholic faith will never die, because Christ himself said, look, the gates of hell will never prevail against it. He set up the church, and the gates of hell will never prevail against it. What we're going to have is what probably Benedict XVI said, is we'll have what's the remnant. We'll have a smaller church, probably far less wealthy, but it will be a more faithful church. And that's what I'm hoping will be the future. Other than that, the word downside of that is a schism. And you ask any Anglican who's joined the Catholic Church, I'll just finish with this. You ask any Anglican who's joined the Catholic Church, they are shaking their heads. This is what the Anglicans did. They went down this path, and look what it's led to. Look what's happened to the Anglican Church. Why does the Catholic Church want to do the same?
Well, thank you, Rocco. It was fascinating. Thanks for joining us here today on Spectator TV.
See you, Alexandra.